Meditation is clearly one way, so I'd say it is wrong to say it isn't. However, the ultimate way, to me, is simply letting go. That's why, in Zen, it is often said that a person, on achieving enlightenment, laughs out loud. All the burdens are gone in that instant and from then on. That certainly happened with me. I was miserable and wondering if life had any meaning or was worth even living. And suddenly, in the moment Zen calls Satori, I felt, in an instant that none of it mattered. From that moment on I have felt free. I can choose as best I can. I am free to do, or not do, anything. It doesn't matter. I am, so to speak, just along for the ride. What happens, doesn't happen, what I want to happen, don't want to happen, it is all the same. It just is. This pops up in a wide range of places. Several CEOs I worked with said at one time or another, there is no good news or bad news, just news. Stuff happens. As the Stoic Epictetus said, the door is always open, meaning if you get to a point where you really don't like the idea of continuing on the journey, well, you don't have to. It doesn't matter. You are in charge, you are free, you choose. Albert Ellis, the great psychologist, taught we can benefit by stop using the would, should. Kierkegaard, the philosopher, said, the only sin is guilt. Nearly every religion comes at this in one way or another, but in the end, to me, it boils down to, it doesn't matter. How you arrive at this doesn't matter either, so if it is through meditation, great. But there are a million other ways. When we talk about enlightenment or awakening, Buddha automatically comes to mind and we know something like that through it. He could reach the truth, or know, the real, but we do not understand very well what that is. We also know that he reached it by meditating for months under the Bodhi tree. What is enlightenment? It is a higher state of consciousness through which it is possible to experience everything that can be experienced, to know everything that is knowable, and to be everything that exists. I assume that this is not understandable to our logical reason, since it only takes for real what it can experience, and none of us have the ability to live in that state of consciousness in a natural way. However, that does not mean that enlightenment or awakening is not experienceable. How do you get to enlightenment? What is the process that the mind goes through in that search for self-knowledge, the higher self, the unitary consciousness, enlightenment, samadhi, or whatever you want to call it? I will try to explain it as my words allow me and with the humility of knowing it only from the reference of the great masters who have experienced it. Mainly, taking Sesha's teachings as living testimony. The first state, the interior observation. Be aware of what your senses reveal to you. Basically in this state, you are the observer and aware of what you experience through your senses, through mindfulness. It could be said that this first stage is comparable to mindfulness. You are an observer, conscious, and your senses are the vehicle to connect with reality. After having lived our whole lives in automatic mode, opening our eyes to the world and seeing both the outside and what we experience inside, emotions, feelings, is already, in my way of seeing, an awakening. But it is not this awakening that mystics refer to when they speak of what enlightenment is. The second state, concentration. Blend with what is observed. The senses disappear. There comes a time when, by continually staying in the role of observer of the first phase, a new state called concentration naturally emerges. This state occurs with the continued practice of meditation. At this stage, the senses switch off. Unlike in mindfulness where the aim is to remain as a conscious observer, in this second phase, the boundaries between the observer and what he observes are blurred. The distance between the observer and the observed disappears, and suddenly she finds himself observing himself. She is able to observe what she is observing. Consciousness is said to observe itself. And now let's see how I explain this to you. Orientals, who have spent thousands of years developing inner contemplation, realized several things. The sense of I begins with each thought and dies with each thought. Everything you use to define yourself lives in your thoughts. Between thought and thought, there is a small empty space in which there is no thought. With which, in that small empty space, there is no me. But nevertheless, there is consciousness. If not, you would be sleeping. That consciousness that underlies the gap between thought and thought as the true self. It is your base. It is who you are in essence. It is what you truly are when there is no mental content. Only presence, only being, only being. And that is the source. That is the original clay. That is why it is said that we are all in essence consciousness. Thus, meditation is the tool that allows access to that small empty space without me, in which there is only pure consciousness, being a witness to it. The space in which your consciousness witnesses and knows your own consciousness. Have you ever experienced it? Have you floated in a space without mental content? Have you experienced the calm, the stillness, the fluidity of that state in which you don't have to do anything, if not just being? Can you imagine living it during not only that small empty space that occurs during meditation but for minutes, hours, or days? You may be happy to know that you already experience this state of concentration for small periods of time in your day-to-day.